This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight it's Ask Us Anything night. So call in your questions on any legal topic that you're concerned about tonight. Maybe you saw some wrecks on the road while you're traveling for the holiday. Maybe you're Christmas shopping and you're thinking about what if somebody gets hurt with the toy that you bought. Call in your questions. You can be live on the air and ask us, 256-536-0077. You can call in, be live on the air, and we'd love to be able to ask you some follow-up questions. But you can also text us to that same number, 256-536-0077. We've got some of your texts popping in. You can also email a legal question any day of the week on any legal topic. You send it to lawcall@waytv.com. And when we get to a show that's on point, we pull some out. We've got some of your email questions tonight. We've also got Heath Brooks from Timberlake. Legan Brooks, good to have you here tonight.
Good to be here. Lots of traveling.
Lots of travel. You saw some wrecks while you're on the road?
I did. A bunch of wrecks.
Got to be careful.
You
We'll talk about, if you have a wreck in Georgia and you're from Alabama, where do you need to hire a lawyer? Where would you file something?
Right.
How do you pursue it? If you got to go back home and you can't take care of your case when you're somewhere else, but call in. And while we get some of your calls locked in, we've got tonight's video. You make the law call. Everybody had turkey for Thanksgiving. Okay, sometimes the geese, the birds, any kind of animal can take offense. So different situations where people are being attacked by, looks like geese on the road. When you're looking at something like this, personal injury attorneys, when you see an animal attack in a situation, so a parking lot is probably different from a roadway, but I don't know. Animals can be very dangerous.
No, they can, and the thing about it is that as a business owner, you do have a responsibility to maintain your premises in a reasonably safe condition, but you can't prevent wildlife.
Yeah.
From that's the whole thing. They're wildlife. We've had various situations where dogs have attacked on business property, and the owner of the business knew about the dog and things like that. And so you can have some responsibility as a business owner when an animal attacks. But when you're talking about wildlife coming onto the property, they're wild. So I mean, it's one of those things where, like I said, we've had several cases where a business owner had a dog or had another animal that caused an injury to somebody who was provided shopping at the store, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
You as a business owner could be responsible. But if it's a goose that flies off of a lake into your parking lot, that's not a situation where you're going to find any kind of responsibility in.
And if you find a nest out there, you better call wildlife management, right? You may get in trouble for harming the goose, so you got to be very careful.
You can't do anything with there are pretty stringent federal laws against messing with wild birds.
Yeah. So call in. We're looking forward to your questions. We got this email question tonight. So this email question came in from Russell. Russell said, I had a wreck and I realized it was my fault. We waited for the cops to arrive, but they're taking so long. I just offered to pay the guy on the side. He got to a mechanic and he said it's going to be $2,500, and I've paid most of it. I owe about $50 left. Asked him for one more week. He flipped out. Now he wants to call my insurance and have it done through them after I've already paid most of the money. How should I handle something like that? Is it a problem to make a deal with the person if you're involved in a wreck? Just make a deal.
Yeah, sure. You could do that.
Okay.
If there's that's a situation that can happen. It's not advisable.
Okay.
It's not advisable if you get into a wreck to not call the police, to not make a statement of what happened. Okay. So because insurance companies get weird. Insurance companies will say, hey, look, there's no police report, so nothing to see here. And then you end up making an agreement with the other side. Then you end up getting out $2,500. Then somebody says you owe me $2,500, and you can't get the money back because you don't even know who hit you. Problems after problems. Maybe that person doesn't have any money. I always say you get in a wreck. Make sure to get a police report, if at all possible. Make sure you're okay. If you're okay, take pictures. Evidence is like water, it evaporates. Take pictures of the damage. Make sure you get the contact information of the person who caused the wreck. And if it ends up being a situation where it's your fault, still make sure you have your insurance company involved. You never know when you can get left out to dry in that kind of situation. Okay,
somebody's texting in based on, we're talking about the dog question and dog bite question. Somebody says, okay, pet question. If someone is dog sitting and the dog bites someone, who's responsible? The owner of the dog or the person sitting, or both?
Well, it depends. It depends on who bites who. So if someone is pet sitting a dog, you take responsibility for the dog. If you are a pet sitter and you know this is a vicious dog and you know this dog has attacked other folks, maybe when you've been pet sitting, it could be a situation where you could be responsible if it attacks somebody that's visiting while you're pet sitting, or that injures somebody while you're walking the dog. If you are the owner of the dog, and this is the weird thing about dog bite law in the state of Alabama. Dogs get like a one-time get-out-of-jail-free card. So if you are a dog that has never bitten anyone else, never given any kind of suspicion that you would be an aggressive animal, and you bite someone while someone else is pet sitting or your pet sitter gets bitten, it's going to be a get-out-of-jail-free card situation. But if the owner of that dog is aware that that particular dog has what's called, the fancy legal term is vicious propensity, has bitten someone before or been vicious before, then the owner of that dog can be responsible if somebody else is pet sitting and that dog bites the pet sitter and the pet sitter doesn't know, doesn't have the owner's never told him, or if that dog bites somebody else while the pet sitter is pet sitting. Yeah. So it can be the owner, and generally you look towards your homeowner's insurance policy.
Okay. We've got Mandy on the line with a question from Section, Alabama. Just drove through there this weekend. Hi, Mandy. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
Okay, the first thing is I was involved in an accident at the first of the year.
Okay.
And is there a certain amount settlement that you can only get in Alabama?
How bad was your accident, Mandy? Was it serious, very serious?
Yeah, I had injuries and had to go to the ER.
Okay. Is there a cap? So she's asking, is there a cap? If you're in an accident, car accident, top of the year, is there some limit that is going to be put on what kind of recovery she could make?
Well, in some situations you can have a cap on your damages, and that's going to really be limited by what kind of insurance coverage is available. So if you get it, Mandy, I'm sorry, this is something that you're going through, and if you get into a situation like this, first thing you obviously need to do is reach out and talk to someone, because you got to gather some information. And when you're in a car wreck, you can have lost wages, you can have medical bills that may be outstanding. Your pain and your suffering, your time down, you're not able to do all the things that you enjoy. And what you hope is that the person that hits you or the company that hits you has enough insurance to take care of your injuries. Because here's what happens. The mandatory limit in the state of Alabama is $25,000. So if you're driving down the road and you have $25,000 in coverage, that means in case you brick it, in case you run a stop sign, in case you run a red light, and you hit someone else and you have $25,000 in coverage, if the person you hit is blown apart, if the person you hit is seriously injured, if the person you hit has a lot of lost wages, you only have $25,000 in coverage, that goes real quick.
Yeah.
And so that can be a limit. What you hope is that you have your own insurance on your own car called underinsured motorist coverage. And sometimes underinsured motorist coverage can step into the shoes of the person who caused the wreck and can provide you with some additional resources. Now, there's a bunch of issues that have to be addressed, of information that has to be gathered to determine how much insurance coverage is available. So this is something that anytime you get into a wreck of any kind, you need to talk to someone who can help you gather the information, an attorney who can help you get things going right.
Mandy, I understand you may have a part 2 to that question.
If you had your own medical insurance and everything, all your insurance is paid for everything, does that still have to come out of your settlement?
Gotcha. So your injuries were covered by your own employer-related medical insurance. So they paid all that. Now, do they have to get paid back for that when she makes a settlement? Yeah, and so here's
another wrinkle, in the fabric. So when you are on the job, when you get into a wreck and your employer pays benefits, that's called a workers' compensation claim. And you're getting workers' compensation because you were on the job. The person who caused the wreck, that's called a third-party claim. And so generally you can kind of think of it as a triangle. You have a claim against the person who caused the wreck. You also have a claim against your employer because you're on the job. Your employer has a responsibility or has a right to be paid back from the proceeds that you get and that goes back to pay for your medical bills. So that is another wrinkle that has to be ironed out. And that's one of those things that really you need to discuss this with the lawyer, because anytime you have one of those third-party claims, there's some benefits a lawyer can help you with, and things that may help lessen the blow and the amount that you have to pay back to your employer.
We're going to take a break. We've got several questions coming in. One very interesting, asking about if their boss is making everybody write a statement out as to why they missed work. Exactly what the reason was. And I'm curious to hear, can they do that? Stick around. It's Ask Us Anything night.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call. Your rights, your calls, live. Presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League & Brooks. Featuring the knowledge and experience of Attorney Michael Timberlake, Attorney Will League, Attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Maservi, and hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back tonight. It's Ask Us Anything night. Heath Brooks is here from Timberlake, League & Brooks. Yep. Happy to have some of your calls coming in, and also a lot of your texts. So if you call in 536-0077, you can be live on the air, or you text us. We got this text question from somebody who says, well, you know what? Talking of employers, we got a photo.
Yeah.
Who are these people?
This is my wonderful staff. This is my team. These are all the people that make the magic happen, and I've got just a fantastic team. Every year we have a Thanksgiving early Christmas party.
Nice.
And so this year we did it at a restaurant downtown 111, which is excellent.
Oh yeah.
Excellent restaurant. And so this is my team, and I wanted to show off all the people that I work with, because they truly are what makes us what we are.
Yep, legal staff all over it. Fantastic.
It's fantastic, folks.
So somebody asked, my employer recently had all the employees sign a paper stating we would give a specific reason why we were calling out. Being that Alabama is an at-will state, are we legally required to say or not say if the absence is health-related?
You know, I think you have to in that kind of scenario. If that's something that your employer requires as a condition of your employment. I mean, you know, there are certain things that you may not have to divulge if it violates one of the federally protected classes. But I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be required. You may be specific and say it's a health-related issue. You know, if the employer pushes back, then, you know, that may be a situation where you may want to move on to another job. I mean, you know, but in terms of whether or not you would have to say, well, I'm having a gallbladder surgery on Tuesday and that's why I need to be out. Not certain that would be a requirement, but the repercussions of that in the state of Alabama, you can be fired for any reason, and I'm not sure that would fall within one of those federally protected classes.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, we got this one. Text question, somebody is saying that her brother died in 2021.
Right.
And as far as she's aware, her ex-sister-in-law still hasn't placed a marker on his grave. The cemetery says that grave is considered to be the sister-in-law's property, so their hands are tied. Is there anything that the sister can do to get a marker placed on his grave? If she's willing to pay for it, can she force them to let them put a marker on his grave? You know,
the thing is that really graves are federally protected. Whenever you're buried, and they're protected forever. I mean, I told you my early days of being an archaeologist, and I did some excavation work, and we oftentimes ran into the federal government when we would find an abandoned cemetery or an abandoned grave. And generally speaking, graves are not owned by anyone. So you can't really mess, and all property's got to be owned, you can't really mess with them, but the question is going to be who actually had the ownership when the brother was buried.
Yeah.
So, you know, if the brother was the actual owner of that, and if the brother had owned that plot prior to getting married, then it may be a situation where the wife doesn't own it. So that may be something to look into to see who actually purchased that. You know, one of the things is you can't mess with the grave once somebody's been placed in the ground either. If you remove grave goods or things like that, we were talking about having somebody had removed a gravestone earlier, and you know, that's a federal crime.
Okay.
So you got a problem
Serious
there.
business. We've got, is it Leela? Am I saying it right? Leela from Huntsville. Hi, Leela. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
My question is, it was sometime last month, about the first part of last month, we ordered a portable building to be installed in our backyard. And when he come in to deliver the building, he tore up our neighbor's yard.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
And they tore up our yard, too, but we just asked them only to repair the neighbor's yard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to do that.
How bad's the damage? Is it significant?
It's very bad. The neighbor's complaining about his yard.
Okay. What do you
Okay.
do about something like that?
Well,
Looks awful, she says.
yeah, and I understand, Leila, and the first things first is that you likely would not be responsible for the damage in your neighbor's yard. And it may be something you want to take care of, you know, just because it's your neighbor and it was your building that was being moved in. But I don't think it's a situation where you're going to be responsible for the neighbor's damage. What needs to be done, and I've handled situations like this. We've handled situations in my law firm like this over the years when, you know, and a little different scenario, but when a dryer is being delivered or a couch is being delivered, a door is destroyed, or the interior floors of a house are destroyed, or the refrigerator was installed by a third-party contractor and it leaked everywhere and destroyed everything. You know, there can be some serious and significant damage, and you're dealing with that now. So that contractor that delivered the building has a responsibility to deliver it and to install it in a workmanlike manner. That's the legal term. And if they did not do that, in other words, if they tore up more than what could reasonably be determined to be torn up, and I think your neighbor's yard, then they're going to be responsible. The question is what do you do to get it? Well, you got some options. Generally speaking, the first thing you want to do is you want to get an estimate of how much the cost of the repair is. And then I would write a letter to that contractor, not call them on the phone, figure out actually who did it. I would write a letter and I would say, this is the estimate. You need to come and repair this. If you don't get anywhere with that, then it may be time to go down to the district court on the 8th floor of the Madison County Courthouse and file a small claims court in the district court.
Okay. We got this text question talking about legal expenses. So a friend's going through a divorce. She says she's been totally truthful with her lawyer. She said he seemed lackadaisical and not wanting to fight for her. And he recently sent a letter saying she's not been truthful with him, and so he's removing himself from the case, but he still wants to be paid. What's to stop an attorney from doing that anytime? Does she still have to make the payment?
Well, this is kind of your wheelhouse.
So lawyers like you get paid once you win. You
That's
take a percentage. And if you don't win, then you don't get paid.
That's right.
Divorce lawyers and family lawyers get paid usually by the hour. So if you've signed up for this person to do a certain amount of work and they send you the statement that says they've done X amount and that you owe a bill, I would say you owe it. Now, you don't owe anything beyond that. Lawyers can't just withdraw at the very last minute. So if your friend was right at trial date and he's trying to get out at that point, it's much more difficult. So judges usually will say, you know, you're filing to withdraw. Is it set? When's it set? What's the kind of the reason for it to be set? So lawyers are not supposed to withdraw right up at the deadline. But if they need to withdraw, I mean, they can withdraw for no reason whatsoever. They could just say, my workload is too heavy, or whatever the reason is. But you do still owe for the work that's been done so far.
Sometimes the judge lets you out. Sometimes the judge
they don't.
Doesn't let you out. You know, and generally speaking, like we work on a contingency basis, meaning I don't get a nickel unless I recover for my clients. You know, this is a different kind of scenario when you're billing by the hour. And generally speaking, you're going to get sent a statement that's going to account for all the time that was spent. And if the time that was spent, you know, is accounted for, you're gonna owe that bill. Sure are.
Tell me a little bit about, if you said you saw some accidents on the road while you're traveling out of state. So if you are in Georgia or further away, you're traveling out of state and you're part of an accident, do you hire a lawyer back at home in Alabama where you know the lawyer? Do you hire the lawyer in the state where the accident happened? You
know what ends up happening is when you get in a wreck in another state, and I see this all the time. I'm licensed in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. I was a glutton for punishment. But when you see somebody that's gotten in a wreck in another state, say you're from Alabama, you're from Huntsville, and you're driving down to Florida, and you get back to Huntsville, what you typically do is you're going to call a Huntsville lawyer, somebody that you may know, ask your friends, hey, look, who do you know that does law? I got in this wreck down in Florida, and now I need to find a lawyer. And what the Huntsville lawyer is going to tell you, what the Alabama lawyer is going to tell you is that, hey, look, let me see if I can find you someone down in Florida that can help you out. Because if you do not have an actual license to practice law in the state of Florida and you live in Alabama as an attorney, you cannot represent somebody in Florida in a court case. So, you know, you need to be careful, but generally speaking, use the resources in the area where you are. If you're out of state, call around. Lawyers in Huntsville will generally know another lawyer in Florida, or Georgia, or Tennessee, or, you know, Mississippi, other states around us that can help you out. But you get in a wreck in Florida, you're going to need a Florida lawyer.
We've got Debbie on the line with a question from Florence. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I recently had the kitchen floor recovered. We had linoleum put down, and we bought the linoleum, and then that store keeps a list of names of people who install. So we took the list, and they highly recommended this person, and he installed the linoleum, and after he was gone, it started wrinkling. And the kitchen is fairly large, so it's obvious we got wrinkles just all over the place. And I contacted him and told him what was going on, and he said, well, we'll get by and see what we can do. It was several weeks, but he did come by. He took a large syringe, needle, and injected glue under those places that had wrinkled.
Okay.
Well, it has happened again, only it's in more places now than just where it was initially. And I contacted him, and I've sent him pictures. I've texted him several times, and he says, well, I don't know what else to do with it. And I said, well, but I'm out a few $1,000s, and I have wrinkles all over my kitchen floor, and I'm not real happy about it. So he says he will come back when he's caught up. But now that's been 5 or 6 weeks ago that he told me that.
Yeah.
So what are my options?
Okay, Debbie. First off, instead of talking to this gentleman on the phone, make sure you put it in writing. Get an estimate of what the cost is to repair your floor. Send him from somebody else who does this kind of work. Send him a letter and said, this is what you owe me, or you can come and fix it. I think about this time, it's going to be difficult to get him to fix it. You're not going to be happy with it anyway. If you can't get him to give you your money back, which is what you need to probably try to do, make sure you put that in writing. You're also going to have to go, you know, down to the courthouse, and you'll have to file an action in the district court for, you know, to recover your damages. That's your option. He's breached your contract. He's not performed the work he was contracted to do in a workmanlike manner, and because of that, you're owed the damages from that. So the repair cost, the replacement, and your money back.
Can't get it from the big box store that recommended him, can you?
Probably not.
Probably not. Let's take a break. We'll be right back answering more of your questions. If you didn't get your questions answered tonight, here's how to get in touch with Heath Brooks with Timberlake, League & Brooks in Huntsville, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com. And if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And Sharon does family law. That's divorces, child custody, and the like. She can be reached at 256-539-7337 or www.sharonfamilylaw.com.
Okay, so here's a question. After a flooding incident, a company comes in trying to help repair, remediate the problem. In the meantime, they tear up something like a specialty bed, ripped up, screws out. Are they responsible for paying for that?
Had a situation like that, they can be. If you don't act reasonably when you're trying to remediate a property, you can be responsible for the damages that you caused, particularly if you didn't have to cause those damages to remediate the property. Had a bad situation happen like that one time.
Okay. Thanks for all your questions, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great night.